Hello and welcome to the Apex Frequency. My name is Sean Fury, and this is a podcast where myself and my guests discuss our respective dreams for what we want out of life. Each conversation presents as an opportunity to conceptualize and refine these dreams that we want to see actualize in reality. We will share ideas, stories, and knowledge in an effort to better equip ourselves and our listeners for the never-ending journey of self-fulfillment and actualization. Together, let's create a new reality. All right. We're rolling. Bertrand Cooper.
That's good, man.
Roommate. Friend of 12 years? Longer. Who's counting at this point? I've known you since I was 14. I'm 31 now. Do the math. Let's get started.
Okay.
Bertrand, you are one of my favorite people. I have always appreciated the way that your mind works and your willingness to share it. You never seem to mind when a person asks why you think about things in a certain way. So that's why I'm having you here, because I value your opinion. And there's a project that I'm working on that I would really, really, really appreciate getting your insight on. As we flow through this conversation, I would like to ask you some questions just to get an idea as to what you're working on. And this is more of, for me, something to look back on, posterity, so to speak. And really to refer to, like, let's say 5 years down the line, you and I, mainly me, but I mean, I don't know your type of preference, but we'll have access to this episode and we'll be able to look on it and go like, okay, how far have we come since the time that we talked about this and conceptualized it? With that being said, if you had to have your own podcast, what would you talk about? Would there be a central theme?
See, I've thought of like several potential podcasts, even though I don't have a plan on doing it. So I'll just run through them. In my writing, a lot of times I talk about communicating statistics better. So one idea was to just have a podcast called Numb, which is taken from the word numbers, and to just do a deep focus on some statistic going through the news circles that I travel and look at how it should be communicated and what you're actually supposed to draw from that. There's also a metaphor there where we're inundated in statistics and we're actually numb to the meaning there. So that's one. Then the other that potentially could come out, since nobody has taken this yet, is Afro-skepticism. There's a popular thought movement right now, especially in academia, called Afro-pessimism, which is the idea that the short version is that being black is always a pessimistic situation to be in. So when I was offered potentially do like appear on someone else's thing on a monthly basis, Afro-skepticism, I Googled it. No one has taken that yet, and there is the philosophical tradition of skepticism where you're just questioning things. I mean, it's in the word, so Afro-skepticism would be me being a black identifying person, being generally skeptical about the things around me. So those are the two big ones. I also have a habit on Twitter of saying that something is an observation, not a judgment. And I like observing how things are without saying how they ought to be. So potentially a podcast of observations without any particular prescription on how you should be. So that's 3.
Kind of stirring the pot, so to speak.
I like taking a big picture and saying, this is what people are doing. Here's everything in that constellation. Here's how that may or may not add up to your goals. And if you like the way it pans out, then keep doing it. If you don't like it, then I suggest doing something else.
I dig that. Well, to give you a bit of a overview of the theme of this podcast, the Apex Frequency. Really, the entire idea is, for as long as you've known me, you know that when I was in high school, this is a bit of a story of my childhood or youth. I was part of a comedy group in high school, and we got pretty successful so far as popularity and people becoming aware of us and really encouraging us, like, hey, you guys are really good at what you do, posting videos on YouTube and really creating a level of local fame that, to me, as one of the 4 members, I always saw it translating to a higher level of success in the same field of the entertainment industry. And I would remember at the height, like, we're like a year in and we're being consistent and we're making all this content and people are loving it. And I would get into these conversations with my friends and we talk about the future and talk about where we want to end up and what our potential is and the things that we can actually accomplish with our level of talent and drive. The thing that I noticed after moving beyond those conversations is I think I was the only one who actually believed that the future that we would dream up of all this success, making movies, winning Oscars, any level of success that we thought paralleled with the type that we were experiencing in high school, I was really the only one of that group who actually thought it was going to happen. Whereas, in my opinion, based on how events have played out, I think the other 3 members were more so content with just having the conversation. And the meaning of this podcast, The Apex Frequency, is to circle back around to the conversations that I like having and to actually discuss what needs to happen, how we need to think, what steps actually have to be enacted in order to follow through with the specific goals or dreams that a person might have. That's really the type of conversation that, in a nutshell. So I really thank you for being on here. As I said, that this episode is really going to be a posterity one for me. You know me very well. I have unashamedly used your brain to bounce off my crazy ideas for a very long time, and I've always appreciated you giving me the time to do that. We're going to get kind of crazy today, but my request of you is to keep it grounded, keep it practical, and let's just see how we can kind of make that work.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you think back on that time, do you think they didn't believe it was possible? Or do you think as they came out here and they experienced what it was actually like, that they didn't like the steps that were involved? Like, potentially they imagined that they could just keep being themselves exactly as they were, doing the things that they were doing, and because of the talent, success would appear. You said they didn't really believe in it, but is it possible that they just don't like the steps involved in becoming successful?
I think you're a lot closer to that. I would say from my own experience of, I hope that's not too much noise pollution, but I would say from my own experience of getting to LA and really being exposed to the amount of work that needed to happen. Jesus, that is some noise. Well, we can keep going because...
Gives it a paranormal vibe.
Yeah, it gives it a paranormal vibe. I like that. I would say from my own experience, I was definitely exposed to an increased awareness as to how much work it was going to take. It was a disillusionment, but I think the reason I chose that they didn't believe it is because they never allowed their belief to expand as they were exposed to new realities. But I think the way that you articulated it is also accurate, where they were exposed to the amount of effort that was required, and they were just like, oh, well, it's not that important. It's not that interesting. It's not that integral to my life that this needs to happen.
That would have been a really healthy version. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I got to witness that. I think what I witnessed was the person who has the realization that you're talking about, it's almost like they realized something wasn't for them and they walked away, head held high. I think what I saw was a reassessment, more of a sour grapes, where they decided that the industry or the various things they wanted to do, it's like, it's not what I thought. It's not the ideal. It's actually a lot worse than what I really. They kind of devalued the dream so they could be happy settling with something else. It'd be different if they replaced it with like another equally as aspirational goal.
Yeah.
But everybody downgraded to a much less aspirational goal. The type of thing where like if when things started going well for me, they didn't even really want to have a conversation or match things. They didn't think the things going on in their own life were at the same level. So I don't know that they really walked away from the dream so much as walked away because, they did an assessment. It's like, actually this stuff doesn't make me happy. It seemed much more of it's harder than I thought. I don't actually like the steps going. It makes me feel bad. And also I don't want to start dreaming about something new. So I'm just going to pretend something at a lower level is satisfying, but I don't know.
Yeah. So let's talk for a second about high aspirations. You know me, and I'd like to get your perspective on this. I've always been of the mindset where if you can dream it, you should experience it. If there's something that you want to do, that you want to experience in life, it should be your directive. It should be essential to have happen if it's something that you actually want to have happen. I find that one of two things usually occurs when I interact with people. A, they don't really have high aspirations, which is kind of interesting, but also, hey, listen, if you don't really want to take over the world, then that's, your preference. But what's more concerning is the individual who did have high aspirations and then didn't feel the need to see it happen. To me, it feels tragic, and it's something that I want to address.
Yeah, there's probably a lot to explore there. I get why that would be a tragedy, because you see the person who's got the aspirations and you fall in love with their dream if you're their friend and you're watching them, architect this whole fantasy of what their life could be, and then they put that away. I don't know, thinking about you, since you're the person who kept doing stuff, it's I don't know. I think for a lot of folks, it's dreaming big when you're a teen or you're in your early 20s. It's a thing to do. It's the thing to do. If you were 17 or 18 and everyone else is saying, their big lofty dreams and you had nothing, you're like, I just kind of want to die a townie. You would seem strange. So I feel like there's almost a social pressure to construct a dream, regardless of how personally motivated you are, just to fit in. But then you go through life and other things are immediately satisfying to some people, like the relationship, having a kid. Maybe they start deriving a lot of satisfaction from their day job. And it turns out that those things are satisfying enough that they're not kept up at night about how they're not achieving their dream. I bring this up just because you've gone through different stages of, adult life, having a job that now makes you comfortable in terms of day job income. You're solid, not satisfying to you. It's not remotely scratch the itch that you have your dream. So I just wonder if some people are maybe coming up with dreams and aspirations because that's what you're supposed to do as a teen, the same way you're supposed to go to a house party or get blackout drunk your freshman year of college as often as you can. Maybe it's somewhat insincere. And then also, if you are going to pursue a lofty dream, over a decade, you got to be in a position where nothing is so pleasurable short of the dream that it can distract you, which I don't know if you can make your mind that way. Like, if you can just decide, you know what, this relationship feels really good, really comfortable, really cozy, but I'm just not going to let myself feel that so I can keep going towards the dream. Although saying it out loud, I can imagine some people do that.
Well, it reminds me, a film that we mutually like and respect is Whiplash.
Oh yeah.
And for those who haven't seen Whiplash, it's the story of a
Cretans
great.
haven't seen it.
It's a great film. J.K. Simmons, Miles Teller. Miles Teller plays a drummer who just wants to be a great. He wants to be a great drummer, and he is willing to sacrifice essentially everything to achieve that. Those are the stories I've always related to. It's like I connect with that. I connect with having a vision of what you can achieve and then just walking the path and enjoying the process, enjoying the struggle, enjoying the pain, enjoying the pitfalls that occur as a result of you knowing that you are driven and will get to the destination that you have chosen for yourself. To me, there's so much fulfillment out of that.
Are you expecting, is the joy of that process, or in your head, are you expecting that the payoff will be worth all the suffering?
It has changed to the process.
The process.
I would say when I was 20, it was like I would spend so much time envisioning the payoff. I would get hard off the payoff. I'd be like fucking thinking like chicks, fucking people just like throwing adulation at me and like going like, oh, you're so great, you're so talented, you're so wonderful, you're so amazing. And like that was my fuel. 10 years passed and I don't know, it's a lot, the fuel is more sustainable if you don't have to like jump into the future every 5 minutes to like, wait, what am I doing this for? Like, oh, I'm doing this for the future. When's the future? 10 years from now? That's not sustainable, in my opinion. Instead, I was able to rewire my brain in a way that was like, okay, this is fun. What I'm doing, the steps that I'm implementing to get further to my goal is actually stimulating, you know? Like just having to change your brain in such a way is fun, you know? So we're kind of jumping all over the place, and that's fine. I'm happy about that. You understand that my intention is to set up a health and wellness consulting service.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, the simple service would be to like, hey, listen, I'm shredded. I got to 5% body fat. I know how to create an aesthetic appearance that is appealing to many people. If you want to get shredded and you want me to help you, contact me and we can discuss nutrition, exercise, motivation. That's simple. It's not really what I want to do. What I would like to do is activate people and get them to focus on the dreams that they were talking about in their 20s or in their early and late teens. And I want them to start focusing on those dreams again. And I want them to understand you can, given the right amount of belief and applied effort, actually accomplish the stuff that you thought was fucking cool. I guess the question I want to ask you is there any value to that? Is that something that, is this like a pipe dream of mine, or do you actually think that people would be interested in being activated in that way? Because if not, I'll just stick with the fitness. I'll stick with like focusing on people improving their bodies and their health and like all that stuff. But that's not my core desire.
So I think there's a parallel there. You know, the people would be coming to you because they, you know, like your aesthetic. They also want to, you know, lower their body fat and all that. They're coming to you because they've struggled to achieve something, but they still want it. The inability to achieve it thus far hasn't made them give up on wanting it. I think that's kind of your same clientele with dreams and aspirations. It's somebody who hasn't achieved it yet. If they had, they wouldn't be reaching out to you. But failing at it didn't make them go through sort of the mental steps that we talked about, you know, earlier at the start of this. They didn't start failing and decide like, you know what, I didn't really want that anyway. They also haven't, I should isolate that. That's the most negative feeling you could probably have, is to just go full sour grapes. I actually never wanted that stuff anyway, and kind of lie to yourself. More positive, they've gone this far, gone to you, and nothing that life has offered them so far has distracted them from the dream. So it's this same combination of, there's something that they want. The inability to get it hasn't made them lose interest. And if, they think that you're achieving your dreams, they might be coming to you to ask for help in achieving theirs. So I think there's value in it, because there would be that same sort of market, people who want something, who haven't succeeded at it, and want someone who can make it more realistic for them to succeed the next time they try.
Okay. So probably starting out, the core group of clientele would be reaching out for the things that I have already succeeded in, which is an aesthetic physique, which is fine. And then over time, as I continue to accomplish more, I'll be able to expand my clientele to individuals who have aspirations outside of fitness. At least that's how I'm mapping it out in my head.
I mean, if people were stringently rational, that's probably how it would work.
Yeah.
But many of us, buy books, whether it's self-help or in business or in any number of things, where we're buying from a consultant, somebody who may not have accomplished the things that we actually want to do, but we think they're very good at teaching us how our mind could work better. That's pretty common in business, where you look somebody up who's a famous writer in business, and they've been a consultant for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So they haven't actually had to build a business in like almost 3 decades. They haven't even been in the economy, and it changes, decade to decade. But people feel like this person's writing helps them understand their own life more clearly. You also see this with people who cross over and say, oh, my outrageous success in one domain of life has given me tools that you can use in any domain of life. Not a comment on whether or not that's true,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't know that you'll actually have to build your own, say, business empire before people will come up to you and be like, oh, how did you do that?
Okay. I like it. This is good. What would you say your own aspirations are currently for? Well, I jotted down some questions I wanted to ask you, and this is one I really wanted to get an answer on. If you could write the code to your reality, what would it look like?
Write the code. Could you rephrase that for me? Because
Sure.
I'm stuck between, are you asking me like, what is my perfect life, or what's my perfect rule set for reality?
I'm glad that you asked that. I'm glad that you asked for a clarification. I was going to leave it open to interpretation, but since you're asking, both.
I derive a lot of satisfaction from challenges and the unknown and uncertainty. So my ideal life, or the code, is really just a life that allows me to feel the most prepared to take on the most uncertainty possible. So the reason I would like to not have, say, a day job, if I could be independently wealthy, I wouldn't spend that time like relaxing. I would spend that time getting better at writing so that I could pitch more, write more. And I have no control over how people will respond to my writing. I would be, doing much more things related to MMA so that I could go and enter tournaments and things like that, and whatever happens, happens. But the thing that I like least about how life is constructed is that you don't get to put yourself in the best possible position to go and face challenges. So it's like all the time that I spend working is not time that I spend preparing for a podcast like this, or polishing my thoughts, or working on my physical endeavors, or any skill that I might want. So when I do grapple with uncertainty in those areas, make a pitch to someone, come on a podcast, it's not the most prepared I could be to face that uncertainty, and that annoys me. So yeah, my perfect life is one where I get to spend more time preparing myself for the various challenges that I take on because I enjoy that. In terms of reality, it would be much harder for me to think about how to write the code of reality because I don't like a rigged game. I wouldn't want, I'm not to steal some stuff from video games. I'm not trying to like win all the armor and then play on easy mode because I just want 30 hours of being a god. That would bore me.
I played that game.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you have any early thoughts of ever being taken to church or anything like that, but the moment heaven was described to me as just this utopia, well, you can't touch utopia because then it stops being utopia. It's already achieved perfection. So it's just living in a beautiful museum for the rest of eternity. And without anyone telling me about reincarnation, I was like, can you just send me back? Because that's where you actually get to do stuff.
That's on point. That's on point with who you are. Yeah. Okay. All right. Whew. I'm just taking that in.
Yeah, the recording.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Totally.
You can go back.
Yeah. Cool. Would you say that there is a narrative to your life? And if so, what is it?
I would say that I live in tension with, in a state of tension with the concept of life having a narrative. I'm good at pattern recognition, which features both in the stat work I do in my journalism, and also stories have to have some internal structure. So I see things that I could turn into a story, but I'm extremely distrustful of the story being true. I think we like telling ourselves a narrative. I think we like how it makes sense. I think also similar to that, overdone, or not overdone, but over-referenced Robert Frost poem, it makes life more palatable if we can always look back on how things turned out and say, I took the road less traveled. It all worked out in the end. This was meant to happen because it got me to this moment, without appreciating the reality that there's probably no version of your life where you wouldn't have defaulted to a story to make it all palatable. No matter what road you take, you would have been telling yourself a story. You were never really going to sacrifice that worldview. It's not like, oh, if it hadn't turned out this way, I would have been like, I guess it's all random chaos and it didn't pay off for me. So I see elements that I can turn into a story, to satisfy the emotional element of my life, but I don't trust that the story's accurate. It's just a way of getting through the day.
I agree. Yeah, I relate to that. Jumping around here. What has been your general perception of me over the years? And I'm going to feed that right back to you.
If anyone's sufficiently interesting, you probably can't wrap them up in a sentence, especially when you've known them for a decade or more than a decade. We did the math poorly earlier.
16 years, I think.
There's no prize at the end.
Yeah.
My general impression of you, or the things that come up is that you're interesting because you're making a series of choices that other people don't normally make, and I like watching you consistently make choices that other people don't make. The biggest one, if we're going back to a narrative or a theme, is that you will always choose trying to achieve whatever your dream is at a given moment. You never compromise on it. You just keep going for it, and that's really interesting. It's been consistent. You just have this sort of ruthless dedication to your dream, and you don't accept degrees less than that. So in your relationships, in your friendships, in your aspirations, and I will say over that time, you weren't always doing the steps to make that dream happen, but you never changed what the dream was. So if it's, well, no, I should rephrase that. The dream may change, but you never get satisfied with not achieving it.
So
you might go like, I want to be a billionaire. And every day that you're not a billionaire, you're not slowly becoming more comfortable with your non-billionaire status. Mm-hmm. You're always just like, this is just a waiting room until I'm a billionaire.
So what's, just for my own curiosity, what has been your interpretation of the inactive years of my life where it does appear to maybe an outsider's perspective that I'm just chill, that I'm like happy with where I currently am?
Well, you're, I guess I would say that you have a natural inclination, even if you don't use the words, you have an inclination to believe in, to act as if we have fate, we have destiny. And a long time ago, you put your dreams in the fate and the destiny column. So you've always been able to just sit around, see things that aren't going your way, and just assume that somehow this is just making the story more interesting and that you're going to end up in the same place anyway.
Well said. Well said. Okay, we'll keep going because you get it, and I'm happy that you get it. All right. Again, this is more posterity questions because this is just going to be such a tickle for me being able to like go back 10 years and just clicking this,
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to state my answers just for future research. Who are your greatest influences, fictional and non-fictional?
Fictional and non-fictional? I wish there was a different word than influences, not that you could use, but that was in our vocabulary. Because influences, the emphasis there is always people who made you want to do something that you hadn't wanted to do before. That's one interpretation. That's my interpretation. So rather than influences, I have the people who affirmed me most, the people who I already felt I was similar to, and they were proof positive that I could do it. Fictionally, which is funny after what I said, because of course a fiction didn't really happen, but as a kid it's, and I don't care what anybody says, it's Batman. Batman was one of the first representations of someone who hadn't ceded any ground physically or mentally in terms of their development, which is always rare to see in America, where like we think in oppositions. Oh, you're very physical, you must be an idiot. Oh, you're really, really intelligent, you must be physically frail. And so Batman is just like, or you could get a PhD in several subjects while also, being able to deadlift 4 times your body weight. And I thought that was pretty cool. So that would probably be the biggest fictional one. In terms of nonfiction affirmations, I would say, I don't have anyone's poster up in my room. I don't dwell too much on it, but when I see certain, it's not one person. It's anytime I come across somebody who showed that a person could develop across multiple domains. Every time I come across, say, like the Renaissance person, and because they developed across multiple domains, they didn't become super predictable. One example of that, like a podcast that's a favorite of mine, is Huberman Lab with Andrew Huberman. You see it at first, it's a guy who's like a neuroscientist at Stanford and specializes in, the eye. And he's always just wearing like a charcoal gray or black shirt. But then when you find out more about him, that, underneath that shirt, he's covered in tattoos, that he was really into skateboarding and a lot of sports growing up, that as a teenager, he contacted, Mike Menser, and was able to get like bodybuilding and early high intensity training information from Mike Mentzer. And those people, it's not like I want to grow up to be like him. It's that it affirms to me, because he's older than me, that it's possible to stay interested in a lot of things. And I also think if you're going to comment on the world, especially if you're going to have critiques, and I am often in the position of criticizing things, a critique is worth a lot more if you could have been a success in the area, and maybe you are a success in the area and you're critiquing it anyway. So much of the criticism that comes from people where, say, the person who is very physically frail, who's critiquing a physical life. Nobody cares very much, because this could just be that you're dismissing something that you were never going to succeed at. Similarly, the physical person who thinks that reading books is stupid or in some way, you're comforting yourself by dismissing a lane that you didn't really get to explore. I like the people who don't have to do that. So not influences, but people who affirm to me that what I want to do is possible.
Good answer. Most of my influences are fictional for whatever reason. Maybe because some people have suggested that I live in sort of a fantasy. I would describe it more like I have an overlay of how I would like reality to look, and I place that on reality. So I'm constantly interacting with the reality that I would like to experience, and there's kind of like the goal of my life is to have these kind of bleed into one, and that's the fight that I'm constantly fighting, which is, I guess, why most of my favorite characters are fictional. But just to list a few, because
I know them, so it's for the listener.
Yeah, it's for the listener. Monkey D. Luffy is a huge inspiration for the future content that I'll be making. Howard Roark, Ayn Rand, non-fictional. I'm giving honorable mentions to my mother and father as they help develop the personality that is exhibited on a daily basis. And
just to be clear, is the influence or what Ayn Rand for her writing,
yes,
or for how she lived her life?
Writing.
Okay.
Writing and philosophy.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Aldous Huxley is another individual who I would say influenced me so far as I don't even know if we have time to discuss on this episode, but the way that A Brave New World was set up, would you call it a utopian or a dystopian?
My understanding, and I guess it depends on like who you give for final say to, the artist or the people interpreting the work, but I believe Huxley thought it was dystopian.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so again, it's a bit of a digression, but A Brave New World, I read that book and I was like, yeah, alphas in charge, then betas, and then, you had the other ones that were, less capable. But basically the way that he mapped it out, where the individuals who were most capable were the ones who were running things, and then the people who, were kind of like the support team. It's like, yeah, that's how like the world should be, just create a system where the ones who want to be in charge and have the ability to lead should be the ones leading, and then everyone else is just support characters in like a good way, where like not everyone is, suffering or, wanting more than what they currently have. I really like how he described it, but it's dystopian, so, it is what it is. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, another influence.
Was that the 100 Years?
Yes.
Okay.
Love that book. And I'm saying this for listeners there is a huge volume of content that I intend on writing, producing, filming, all that stuff. And we will always be able to refer back to my core influences being the people that I was exposed to as a child and really shaped the type of writing and content and storytelling that I intend on having an output for, or having an output of. Don Draper's another one. Bruce Lee. Okay.
Don Draper? Okay.
Don Draper, yeah. Don Draper and Mad Men as a whole. Don Draper was always just such an enigmatic character to me. But I really appreciated how he walked through life. And not so much his core values, but the level of intrigue and interest that occurred due to him knowing when to speak and when not to speak. He was interesting even when he was quiet. And that really stuck with me when I watched the show. I was like, oh, you can just be on camera having millions of people consuming this and you're not saying anything. Just thought that was so cool. You know what I mean? And it's scripted. You're scripting a moment where he's not saying anything and we're just watching it. You're not writing anything.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. All right, so jumping around again. What would you say are your greatest strengths and weaknesses?
It's a hard, it's a hard question because I think for the most part, strengths and weaknesses are contingent. But contingent on society, the economy, politics, everything as it's currently constructed where we live. My greatest strength is probably the speed at which I can process information and use it to make the least wrong choice in a very short period of time.
So high IQ.
You can be very intelligent, but need a lot of time to process things. You can be a very slow thinker, but still a very gifted one. And you won't always be as rewarded as the person who can think very, very quickly. So I would, high IQ, sure, but I would emphasize the processing speed as the main one. Next to that, I'm good at thinking in terms of, I'm sure there's a correct psychological term for this, but thinking in terms of a constellation. I can hold more things in my head and reference how they interact with each other than other people seem to. They seem to be much more specific, like I'm thinking, and since I'm in this context, I'm only thinking about things that apply in this rule set. I'm only thinking here. I'm very long-winded in part because all of my thoughts arise, for the most part, from how like 4 or 5 things that are holding my interest interact with each other. So the current economy and social system seems to pay me a premium for that processing speed and the ability to hold multiple things in my head. And then, I enjoy how effort and exhaustion feel. A lot of people will ask me, like, how do I do this or how do I do that? Or they'd get so tired. And it's like, well, that's your answer. It's like, sorry, not that they would get so tired, but they wouldn't enjoy it. It would make them miserable. And it's like, that's your answer. That's the difference. Like, I use the feeling of exhaustion to get to a feeling of pleasure for me. If you don't have that, then yeah, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be doing the stuff that I do physically or mentally. In terms of weaknesses, I would, again, contingent my mismatch with certain things. My mental life is kind of like attempting to use a shotgun as a sniper rifle. A lot more focus in a single area is required for success than what I would like. So I have to, because I find everything interesting and because I'm also aware I never know what will be useful to me, because I've learned things and not had to be useful for 4 or 5 years. And then when it was pivotal. So because I'm interested in most things and because I know that there could be a hidden utility in most things, it's hard for me to not just follow my instincts and absorb things as I'm interested, because it's all worthwhile. But time, at least as we experience it, linear. I'm going to die at some point. I'm aging. There's a right time for things. There's a time where I can use something maximally, so I have to force all of that interest into doing things in a certain order. So instead of having one book be a third, finish another half, this one, I'm almost done, juggling that with like imbibing movies. Like, I have to think about like, what is the maximum, what is the optimal way to arrange these things so that each one can be fit into a single life. And it's a weakness because I struggle to do it. And on the days where I fail, I end up like not making forward progress in a linear fashion. I dabbled in everything, and that held me back.
Good segue into my next question. Is there anything that you feel that you need to accomplish in order to feel satisfied on your deathbed?
I have a lot of visions of my deathbed, and satisfying myself in the future is a daunting task. I can't say that there's any one thing. To be happy on my deathbed, I'd have to look back over my life and say that I never gave up on anything that I wanted. So I have to live a life that achieves that. And slight nuance, I can accept not getting something, but it has to be
outside of
yeah something external had to take it away from me or block me from it. I've had several instances of that throughout my life.
I relate to that. What accomplishments are you most proud of to date?
Internally, I don't experience many things as a source of pride. I actually kind of don't like the concept of pride, especially because I can't factor in or factor out the amount of luck involved in life, the fact that I see other people who are working as hard as me, who seem to be doing all the same things, but don't seem to be getting the reward. So not a huge fan of pride. If you have to have pride, then I guess it probably is better to have pride for things that you accomplish. My internal world, the story that I'm telling to myself, is that I just have a sensation of being constrained or held back versus feeling a kind of frictionless peace. There's no friction between the external world and my internal world. And the things that I've done it the most, it's probably been when I've finished something in writing. That's when I feel the most free, is like when I am given the time to complete a thought, which for me normally means completing it in writing. I feel at peace. There's no external friction. There's no, so.
Good answer. I relate to that. Do you want to do a quick plug of all the writings that you've already published?
I don't get royalties. So
Fair.
But yeah, if people for some reason are interested, the main one is for current affairs. Last year, my name's distinct, so if you just look up Bertrand Cooper, you'll find it for current affairs. And then you'll also find 2 pieces for the New York Times. And then I'm normally promote those things, or at least share them, I should say, on Twitter @_blacktrash.
Thank you. This is a great switching gears moment for the real reason that I brought you on here. So with that being said, I would like to take a quick break. I got to urinate.
You're human just like the rest of us, huh?
Yeah, I know, it sucks. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and get into the meat and potatoes of the actual project that I'd really like to conceptualize. And I already have an idea, but I'd like to just bounce some ideas off of you.
Do we have sponsors?
Not yet, but coming soon. Thank you. Yep. Slate it now. Retake or going back to episode 2. Cool. So much more comfortable. I was like, yo, am I actually going to suffer through 30 minutes of having to take a piss? I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
Increases alertness. That's an concept.
I was thinking about, I was like, well, this will create like a sense of urgency, but I'm like, I'm not going to speed through it now, you know? Are we filming?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll keep that in there. Maybe I'll just keep this in here. A little slice of life moment, you know?
I mean, we never stopped recording.
Good. I like that. I mean, we'll get rid of the dead space. Hopping back into it. You had said something that I wanted to expand on before doing the switching of the gears. Your deathbed, knowing that it's not so much specific accomplishments, but an awareness of doing everything that was within your power to accomplish the whatever. Any specific accomplishments that you would like to achieve?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, I mean, I think it'd be great to be on my deathbed and know that the many stories across nonfiction and fiction elements, the many, a lot of those that I've had ideas on, that I've wanted to write, that I finished those. I have a long history of excelling in physical pursuits, but whenever I try to gain momentum so that I could do it in a professional capacity, something happens, I've had 3 hernia surgeries to just give, to allude to that. So finally getting to finish something physical to its competition level would be great. And right now I've been really fortunate in that most of the people who have known me have said that, I was a positive aspect of their life. So if I could go all the way to my grave with keeping that up, where people think that I was, a source of, whether it was like good information, actual support, laughter, joy, but just that whatever it was, I was always part of the positive dimensions of the people who I knew. That'd be great. The writing and stuff that I do is very cool, but there's a few incidences, not very cool as in like it's cool to everybody. It's cool to me. But I have no idea how that writing will impact anything, or if it will, have a life of its own and will go out there into the world and do the things that I would like to do. So the things that really have been valuable are the times where I've concretely, like in real life, been there for someone and improved their life. So if I could look back on a lot of that, mixed with, I wrote my silly ass ideas all down from start to finish, and I got to physically compete in some things without getting that 4th hernia. That'd be pretty great.
Dope. So just to summarize, writing, physical exertion, and connections in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Okay. Real quick, we have talked briefly about self-employment in the future.
Yeah.
I think people, when they become aware of you, and you're kind of like the best way to describe it with the limited vocabulary they have, you're like a rapper's rapper. So like, let's say we were both rappers,
I'm Pharaoh Monch over here.
Yeah, I would be like the rapper that people know. It's like, oh, yo, Sean Fury's dope. And then I'd be like, yo, Bertrand's dope. You know what I mean? But then like other people like on the high, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So just for shits and giggles, what's your typical exercise workout week like?
Well, rest in peace to Louis Simmons, West Side. it's powerlifting taken from a few different methods, but mostly the conjugate method. So people who listen to you who are fitness enthusiasts will know that's 2 max effort days, Monday and Wednesday, 2 dynamic effort days, Friday and Sunday. You're focused on powerlifting, so the maximum effort is going to be for either squat or squat, deadlift, or bench. Same for the dynamic effort. And I would say that I've combined having that split between maximum effort and dynamic effort with some things picked up from Matt Wenning, who also trained at Westside. And so I get a lot of Wenning warm-ups from him. But yeah, just this classic Westside powerlifting where you have a main lift and you have accessories. The accessories come from, if you videotape yourself, you can see why you missed a lift. So, you're deadlifting, your back stays at the right angle, but your legs maybe don't pull it up all the way. Okay, you're missing leg drive. You're squatting, but you're getting collapsed by the bar. Okay, you're missing, spinal erector and core. So each lift becomes your way of diagnosing what accessories do you need. And then that mixed in with the parts that are more speculative, which is you got all these really interesting workout, methods that are coming out all the time. I mean, a lot of people know CrossFit, but once you're really in this world, you got like CrossFit, WEC method, you got Landmine University, you got the primal movement folks, you got the animal flow folks, you got gymnastic bodies. My thinking is that probably anyone who wants to have good performance, if you're not just working out for I'll say good performance and health, you should do an inventory of the ways you move the most often. So right now we're in one context, but I'll jump to someone else's context real quick. A lot of people who are dancers are going to have much more circular movements. They're going to spend a lot more time doing things that, have an S shape, have a lot of rotation. So they might want a lot more things where like they're actually strengthening in, linear, so if we would keep up physical movements, a dancer might also want sprints. They might want also just the traditional powerlifting moves where it's like straight line, either straight up and down or left, right, vice versa. Me, who's doing a lot of things that are just linear, I need to find things that are going to be circular or funny angles. So that for me could come from, say, if I were to get into dancing or something like WEC method that's very into circular, or rock climbing where I'm going to be doing that. So I could get really into the weeds in this because, at 17, I got tired of the fact that I could see that both Men's Health and Men's Health UK had like seasonality to it. So I started seeing like the articles just keep writing the same stuff. And I went from that to like reading actual textbooks on what strength and conditioning was there. And then I got put onto Westside, and then Louis Simmons was always gracious enough to name all of the Soviet era people who had informed his stuff. So then I was just reading like what translated Russian textbooks there were on this stuff. So I'm an old head when it comes to like fitness, being available on the internet and in YouTube. So this could go forever for me. Yeah. But back to the beginning, what I'm doing, West Side with a little bit of influence from other West Siders like Matt Wenning, and then my own speculation that I need to include movements that counteract what I do most of the time.
Thank you for that. I've always been curious about that. I've never gotten around to getting such an in-depth, breakdown. So thank you for that. Okay, now let's switch gears.
There's a lot of gear switching in this. It's like round.
Well, I've been saying we're going to switch gears, but we haven't switched gears. But now we are officially switching gears.
Is it time to break out the tin hats?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, so let's start off with a question, and then I'm doing my own thing right now. So you've already been exposed to the content I've been putting up on social media, and you've known me for a while. What's your take? What's your interpretation of the apex of all alphas project?
What's my take on the project, or what's my take on what you've put out so far?
Let's get both.
My take on what you've put out so far is it is different in the sense of there's an autobiography. Most of there's going back to my men's health reference, and also men's fitness. There's lanes for people in the fitness sphere who want to do it professionally. Normally, when you see autobiographical stuff, it has to do with like weight loss, or it has to do with developing some new skill. But it's normally, here's the narrative: you take someone who is at a distance, like a really big distance from what we consider healthy, or has the right aesthetic, and you watch them journey to it. You're a little bit interesting in that you're already at a point that people would consider you've achieved an aesthetic. You're not, your BMI isn't going to be in the overweight category, and you're filming your journey from that to say 5% body fat, and it's a pure. The journey's just for you. You're not a professional bodybuilder. You don't have to lose that much body fat, but you're choosing to, and it's a purely aesthetic journey outside of bodybuilding. And you're also already starting from this point that most people would consider healthy. So that's uncommon. At the same time, you don't seem to have one of the gimmicks that people are doing that are really popular right now. So that creates a sort of unknown, like, will people latch on to you without a gimmick? You're not doing animal flow. You don't work with kettlebells. You're not doing pull-up bar tricks. You're not doing odd object carries. You're kind of just going to the gym and working out the way we might see, like, say, a Mike Menser. And you're also doing it, here's the other thing, you're not doing inspiration porn. So you're not, like, pouring sweat like Dave Goggins, or you're not Dorian Yates in the filthy Rocky-style gym. So it's one part's unique, and then one part is like, well, none of the current tricks of the trade are being used here. Will people find this more authentic, or they'll be like, I don't know, I'd rather a guy who's got is dragging a kettlebell by a rope with his teeth.
Yeah. So on that, I hate the short form content. I hate it. I wish that I could pay someone to do it. I wish I could pay someone to just tell me what to do with the short form content, because I understand how essential it is to the ADHD culture. But I did not sign up for short form content. I didn't come to LA to make 1 minute snippets. Granted, doesn't mean I shouldn't improve. And I think that moving forward, I do need to start focusing on like more inspirational stuff. Because when it comes to working out, I don't believe in gimmicks. If you're educated on what you need to do in the gym in order to make the improvements that you have in mind, I'm educated on what I need to do, and there's nothing flashy about these movements. It's just consistency and high intensity on my end. So I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to working out. And to your point, my idea when it comes to short form content is like, all right, get as shredded as you can, get the 5% body fat, and then whatever you do on camera, you're only on there for 30 seconds, a minute. You could do anything. Do a handstand. Honestly, that's how my mind is applying itself to short form content, because I'm not interested in it. With that being said, I appreciate your take on it.
Do you want the other answer for the overall
please.
Project?
Mm-hmm.
This is really hard because, as you mentioned, I've known you for a long time, and I don't know if you did this in your first episode or when this is covered, if it's already been covered in your content. But things related to Apex and that concept have been with you for a really long time. So having known you for a really long time, it's hard to separate what you're doing now from that, like what I used to hear about this. But But my understanding of apex frequency, and because I'm going to interpret it along those old lines, is that it's part of this project you have of, it kind of goes back to that earlier story that you told where you were part of a group of friends, they were doing comedy, and you guys had some success, and then eventually you kept pursuing it, and half the group dropped off completely, and then there's another person who, in their own ways, making some moves, but it seems distant, and you two aren't together. What I've gotten out of what you want to do is to kind of prevent that thing from happening again, and that, going to like Brave New World and things like that, that you want to usher in some, you don't just want 3 other people who are at their peak. You want to do something that will ensure this massive contingent of humans who are all at their peak, who you are connected to in some network. And it's almost like you don't really know what's going to happen on the other side of that, but it sounds Edenic. It sounds like a beautiful world to you if you had hundreds of thousands of other people who cared about achieving their peak as much as you care. It gets a little bit fuzzy on the people who don't peak. You clearly don't, want to just throw them into the Soylent Green machine, but you're not too concerned.
Well said. Well said. Thank you. So, with that very accurate description of the lofty goal, I'm going to format it into that of a story.
Okay.
The reason being is because, when it comes to artistic expression, my first exposure into the arts was through acting, and I still do like acting, and it is very fun, and it's something I'm quite good at, and I look forward to doing it more in the future. But a couple years went in, and going back to the comedy group that I was a part of, I was acting in it, and I was producing. We produced a couple of pilots and won some awards in that comedy group with film. And then it kind of just petered off, and we graduated high school, and a year passed, and we're all out of high school, and nothing's happening. I had written a screenplay about the 4 of us winning a screenwriting award, and in the screenplay, like, we just won $1 million to produce the film that we won the award for.
Yeah.
And the whole movie, the whole screenplay was about, like, all right, what are we going to do next? Now we've got the access. Our entire lives are about to change in the way that we imagined, or in the way that we wanted. What shall we do next? And that was an introduction into writing for me, writing that screenplay. And then from there, I went on to write a very, very long manuscript, 839 pages, called The Narcissist, which was also focused on myself and my 3 friends in that comedy group, and the year that occurred after nothing happened after we graduated. And my pitch at the time, when I was writing it and people were asking me about what the story was, it's like, what if the Beatles never became famous and they're just still living in Liverpool? They've got that talent, they've got that ability, they're special, but they just didn't do anything with it. How does that eat away at them? Do their perspectives on life change in a negative way? That's what I was kind of questioning. For me, it did. And I don't even want to go back to my friends because, well, for one, for the most part, they're not my friends anymore. Mm-hmm. But I am still obsessed with my story. And I was one of those core members of, I would say that experience of having an exposure to living the life that you've always wanted, and then having it not pan out, has always been like a muse in a way to me. Just like living in reality and then knowing that your dream is over there, but you're not going to it. That's always been a very obsessive. That's the thing I go to sleep thinking about. So it's kind of ballooned from that manuscript, and I really got involved with writing it and things of that nature. And it's evolved from the core group, which was 4 people. And since I'm no longer really in touch with them, I've just expanded on the one individual that I do have access to, which is myself. And because I'm so ambitious and I'm all about seeing how far a person's dream can go if you have access to, all resources. So I came up with the apex of all alphas. And that was like the title, the brand that I would refer back to when it comes to all future accomplishments. To me, it's similar to, again, I had already listed Monkey D. Luffy, who I'm sure there's enough fans of One Piece that have an awareness of this anime character, manga character. But what's always been appealing to me about his story, and it applies to basically any Shonen Jump manga or a story like Naruto and Naruto, even take Ash Ketchum and Pokemon, they start out at the beginning of the story with a declaration. I'm going to be, in Luffy's case, I'm going to be the king of the pirates. I'm going to be king of all pirates. Naruto, I'm going to be Hokage and be like the president of my ninja village. Ash Ketchum, I'm going to catch them all, right? And then audiences watch their story as they go through the events leading up to that success. What's interesting about, what's always been interesting to me about those stories, and again, it's fiction. I understand that it's fiction. But what's always been interesting is Luffy starts out saying he's going to become king of the pirates, and the audience knows he's going to do it. The story cannot end until he becomes king of the pirates. That's how it ends. Because in no realm does a writer write a main character, go 1,000 chapters into the story, and then go like, okay, but he dies. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen that way. And, I mean, just for the sake of bringing it back to reality, even if it were to happen, let's say in my life, and I were to die before I don't succeed in all the things that I have set out to do, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you still put yourself on the path, and as far as you get, that's as far as you get. In the same way that if Luffy were to die before he became king of the pirates, does that make it a worse story? Not in my opinion. But that's just me. So really just to like circle back around, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that I have really become attached to. The concept of making a declaration and then seeing it actualize as a result of believing in it and going through the proper steps to see it occur. So my idea of this character that I'm making, who does exist in real life in some way, I mean, my name is Sean Fury, and that's the brand that I'm associating with Sean Fury, but it's more so I want to create scripted content around this character. And what this character looks like to me is sort of a cross between Ozymandias in Watchmen and Dr. Manhattan, where Ozymandias, and this is the tin hat shit, so yeah, that's where we are now. Ozymandias became aware that he was, let's say, in this fictional universe, he was the smartest person in the world, and he had an awareness of it. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to essentially save the world, create world peace. He went about it in a very villainous way, ended up killing billions of people in the story. But, that was the story. Me personally, I would like to take his rise to full-blown popularity and awareness, like the world knows of Ozymandias. I would like to take that segment of his story and script it. And instead of using his character, I'm using Sean Fury, apex of all alphas. He is the highest level of human potential imaginable. So it applies to physicality, mental, spiritual, financial, influential, all aspects of what a person can achieve is being achieved through one human. And as a result, the meaning for the theme of this story is if Sean Fury can achieve such a high level of success in all fields, then that means whatever goal that you thought was difficult to accomplish, it's not as hard as you might have thought, or it's something that you can't imagine. If Sean Fury could imagine that, then you should be able to imagine something a little bit smaller. So that's really the idea. And, we went through a lot, and really just to sum up with what I would like to collaborate with you on in the future is the type of content that I want to do isn't specified to my character only, but the people around me. And it's similar to creating the network that you described a couple minutes ago. I see you as a great character. I see you as a character that can honestly have a spin-off series or your own film and really focusing on the goals and ambitions that you have. And it wouldn't just apply to you. It would essentially, I would want to create a franchise or like a universe where I get to incorporate other individuals aside from myself, but everyone would still know that we're all living in the same universe of that central figure.
When you say character and scripted,
television, film,
it's hard
literature.
Is the real Sean Fury supposed to achieve this point in all domains, or is it the character that you're basing off of yourself achieves that in film, TV, all this?
I have it in my head where it's three different worlds. We have the real world, the one that we're talking in, and all content related to podcasts, social media, live speaking events, book tours. All of that's happening in the real world, but it's still the same brand. Then we have a secondary world where it's all scripted content, where it's TV shows, movies, literature, but it's still the same character.
I guess what I'm asking is Sean Fury in the real world as good as Sean Fury in the script?
Open to interpretation. Ideally, yes.
So you need to achieve the same things that you want the fictional version.
It would be happening simultaneously. That's my idea.
Do you have to prove it all the time? Or, for example, do you actually need to go and dominate, say, in like the financial markets? Or do you need to achieve, like, people just look at 3 other accomplishments and they're like, oh, he probably would have if he had tried?
No, financial, yeah.
So in all the domains, so art, finance.
Everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Over the course of a lifetime.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, I'd not want to do it in a lifetime because I want to retire and make movies. Like movies that aren't this project.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the idea. Oh, and there was a third world too. So we got the first world, which is right here, real world. Second world is television, film, literature, and again, it branches away from my character. Any person who comes into contact and makes a connection with me, if they're interesting enough, we could fucking write a book about them, make an episode of a TV show about them, make a whole fucking. I don't care. I want to create a franchise that exists beyond. It's more about the network that I'm interested in creating, and less about the actual central figure from there as a world. It's world building. But the third and final reality it would be animation. So in the animation version, like let's say comics, graphic novels, video games, potentially animation, Sean Fury as a superhero called the Enlightened One, who is up against the Illuminati, and he's got superpowers that are based in self-belief. So at his highest moments of self-belief, he has abilities such as reality warping, probability manipulation, some telekinesis, some levitation, and things of that nature. But that's at his highest belief. And then in moments of self-doubt, it's more reduced to, you get to play with that. But it's similar to a character in Marvel, but that's like a digression. So that's kind of where I'm at with the idea. And what I would like to do with you moving forward is I see you as a fantastic character that I can continue to work with in my scripted content. And I hope to understand you better and to speak with you even more because you're a person, in my opinion, that people should pay attention to, study, and kind of work to interpret how your brain works so that they can apply it to themselves and the betterment of society. And I think that would be the crux of your character. It's like, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. But we're kind of at a lapse of time. I'd really like to thank you for coming on here. Final thoughts on Bertrand's end?
Nothing impressive to say. Thanks for having me. I know how much this project meant to you and how much went into it. So it is, it's cool to be a part of it, get to see it up close. I've listened to the mental version, what you've had in your head for such a long time. So this is kind of like getting to be in that made real just a little bit. So it's a cool time, man.
Do you get the project?
When you say that, do I understand the words coming out of your mouth?
Do you understand the words? Yeah, do you?
I understand the words coming out of your mouth. If you're talking about the feasibility of the project or whether or not, just to give you a sense, it's kind of like...
Real quick, it is perceptual. Yeah. The whole project it's only accomplished if it's a perceptual appearance as opposed to like, right?
I think this gets back to when I tried to ask, like, is this stuff you're really doing?
Yeah, it's like, obviously, my weakest version would be this reality. Uh-huh. And then there'd be a stronger version that's scripted, and then the strongest version is, like, animated. We're talking about, like, animatrix type stuff where it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it seems, I understand. Yeah, I grasp it.
Good. Well, that's what I'll be working on for the next... I'm saying 10 to 20 now because I feel like it's going to be a very engrossing project. So I look forward to working with you more and really taking your brain and turning it into a great character that I hope to incorporate into my future projects.
As long as there's royalties.
Yeah, of course. You're going to be rewarded handsomely. All right. This was episode 2 of the Apex Frequency. We got a little crazy there, but I feel good. I really appreciate, again, you hopping on here, and I look forward to more episodes and more content. Thank you.